Should we keep talking?
And we're going to show a trailer at a certain point as well, and the trailer is going to be seen up where the game was before. So.
Seriously, don't hurt yourself.
Yeah.
So we're all mic.
Yeah, I think we're good
Sound
to go.
good? Everything sounds good?
Hey, Danny, are you set?
Danny, you saw a light just went on?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Okay. So, roll. 1 second.
Patrick, you go by Patrick and not Pat, right?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, just make sure.
Is that mostly a 2-shot or a 1-shot? Or do you go back and forth?
It'll follow, it'll track.
So, okay. So it's on one and it goes back and forth?
It'll go to the two of you between questions, and
Okay.
one of you on whoever's answering, and then follow, and we've got the line to cut to, and Amanda as a reaction.
Very good.
Cool.
And you go by Steve, never
Steve.
Right?
You want
Got
me
it.
to do-
Sure.
Amanda, is that your exact
Can each of you
position?
give me a quick count to 10?
What's that?
A quick count to 10 for Mike?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Gotta make sure you still remember.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Gotta wake up a little bit.
I lean forward sometimes like this, Chad, and sometimes I go back like this, but I'm mostly gonna be like this, especially if I'm facing the camera.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start the timer, then do the teleprompter, and you guys are good to go.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Roll.
Yes, roll, please. Thank you.
Camera speed.
Are you guys nervous?
I'm more nervous about people here than actual topic.
Hey, can we just get rid of all the people and just do the cameras?
You're fine people and everything.
Just don't like fall asleep.
Yeah.
Because then I'll become
Yeah.
really insecure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Hopefully I won't fall asleep.
Hello and welcome back to How We Make Movies. I'm your host, Amanda Lippert, and today's guests are writer-director Steve Anderson and DP Patrick Mead Jones. They're the team behind the films This Last Lonely Place and The White Orchid. This Last Lonely Place is a neo-noir that follows a cab driver through the dark streets and back alleys of Los Angeles on his last job before leaving town. Lust, greed, and murder ensue. Some things never change. It stars Reese Coiro, Xander Berkeley, and Carly Pope, and won the Cinematography Award at the Newport Beach Film Festival. Thank you, and please welcome Steve and Patrick. So I have to just go there. Your bio, Steve, is one of the most unique, funniest, and interesting bios that I've ever read. Would you mind if I read it for our audience?
No, feel free. I don't know which version it is. There's been a few different versions.
I've got it right here on the teleprompter. All right, Steve is a Peabody Award winner. He's shot 7 national documentaries for PBS and thousands of hours of broadcast television. He's been charged by lions on the Serengeti Plain, caught fire in the Malibu fires, and rattled homeless by an earthquake. He's been blessed by Mother Teresa, drank martinis with Captain Kangaroo, flirted with Raquel Welch, and smoked hash with Hunter S. Thompson. He's been trained as a Hollywood stunt driver, flown aerial acrobatic, and shot hoops with Magic Johnson. He's been shot at in the LA riots, chased O.J. Simpson up the freeway, and lounged in the grotto at the Playboy Mansion. He's one of the original guitarists and songwriters in the upstate New York jam band, Slipped and Fell, and he also makes a damn fine meatloaf.
I'd add to that a pretty good spaghetti bolognese.
My work here is done. Thank you.
Forget about Raquel Welch and Hunter S. Thompson. Where's my meatloaf?
Well, we'll have a little meatloaf after party.
All right. That sounds good. So tell me, first brief us a little bit. Tell us a little bit about the film. I read a brief description, but what are the themes and what kind of was the background behind writing this?
This Last Lonely Place, it's basically a film noir, a neo-noir, although I never cater to that term neo-noir. It's either film noir or not. I think people can figure out what it is. And it's set primarily in a cab ride around Los Angeles on one evening. And it's about a cab driver that picks up a investment banker who you quickly find out is on the run. They drive around for a little bit with some impending doom, and then they pick up his mistress at the Chateau Marmont, and things just generally go from bad to worse at that moment.
Do you guys want to see the trailer? Yeah. All right, let's see it.
George 5665, I'm 2 blocks from there.
Right, my house, yeah, on the west side.
Have you ever heard the Zen parable about the bird in the hand? There's an old Zen master who lives in a village. He's the wisest man in all the land. And one day a stranger comes traveling down the road. He's heard about the master. He's gonna play a trick on him. So he captures his bird. He goes to the master with the bird behind his back. He says, "Old man, if you're so wise, tell me, is this bird behind my back alive or dead?"
What does he know?
He knows nothing.
What do you know?
He's a cab driver. He knows he's taking us to the airport. But the back failed.
You both get out, I can't be a part of it.
The next one goes in your head.
Shoot me! Things won't cold in the desert. He's gonna shoot me fine, you know that. Stranger smiles because he knows that the master guesses he's dead. Let the bird fly free. He guesses he's alive. Crush the bird. The master says, the bird is wherever you wish it to be. Its fate is in your hands.
So my fate is in my hands.
My fate is not in my hands. I can never control it. It's in someone else's hands.
Of the stranger you meet on the road.
Hey.
The first thing that I noticed when I watched the trailer is that it was made in association with the Humphrey Bogart estate. How did that connection come about?
It was just one of those, it's kind of a Hollywood story, one that you can't quite believe. I mean, as filmmakers, producers, and independent filmmakers, the one thing you're always looking for is, money, financiers, support.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
So, I'll make a long story very short. When I wrote this script, I had kind of decided to use the Kickstarter route. And this is almost 2 years ago now. And Kickstarter was a little new. It was still around, but it's not as famous as it is today. But I'd written the scripts, I did my little video pitch, I put it online. I also attached the script to the Kickstarter, which was a little different. People don't do that as much. And about halfway through the campaign, out of the blue, I got an email from the estate of Humphrey Bogart. And Robert DeClercq, that runs the estate, said that he'd seen the Kickstarter pitch. He had read the script and loved it. And they were looking for sort of an interesting way to get the Bogart estate back in the film business in a modest fashion. And next thing you know, we met, and they became executive producers and signed on. So it was one of those, I would have never, you think about going to your uncles or your, whoever, or to production companies, but I would have never thought, hey, let's go to the estate of, a living legend and see if they want to finance the film. But it worked out well, and it was the title, This Last Lonely Place. The title itself is a little nod to one of Bogey's famous films, In a Lonely Place, and that's one of the reasons that they kind of got interested in it.
And you said they found out about you originally from a tweet?
Yeah, it was, when you're doing Kickstarter campaigns, I'm sure maybe some of you have done them or been associated with them, you get, it's like you get all gung-ho, and then you gotta, and about 2 days in, you just realize you're completely annoying your friends, on Facebook and Twitter. And so you take a few steps back, and right in the middle of the campaign, I had to fly back east to see my father. So it was late one night in the airport, and I just started tweeting movie quotes that I could remember, but inserting the word Kickstarter in them. Like, you know, Jaws, we're gonna need a bigger boat. I just said we're gonna need a bigger Kickstarter, and then just put the link. And one of the tweets was, I believe this is gonna be the beginning of a beautiful Kickstarter. And I had tagged it with Bogart, and that's how they found the campaign and took it to him. So just that one little tweet, kismet of a tweet,
That's
led us to this stage right here today.
And what better place could you
Yes,
be, really?
exactly.
I love that story, and it's so magical, and it's the greatest culmination of the old phrase, like, luck is when opportunity meets preparation, because you've been making films for years, and you've had this script ready to go. You were going to do it on your own anyway, and it just happened that your values lined up with their values, and you guys were able to make something happen. And now you've got, I think it's $5 million for 5 films in 5 years. It's a pretty enviable position for any filmmaker, especially an independent filmmaker.
And we've already made our follow-up. I mean, we shot The White Orchid, which is the second film we shot last November. So this film we shot a year ago November, and then The White Orchid that we've just we finished. I'm editing it now, but it's so it's been very, very fruitful. It's been a lot of fun, and they are completely supportive. I had dinner last night with Stephen Bogart, which is Humphrey and Lauren Bacall's son.
Did you tell him I said hi?
I did, yes.
Okay.
And they were, it's just, sometimes I was sitting around the table and you can't quite believe that you're sitting there with, essentially Hollywood royalty. And it's a lot of fun.
But, as magical and as lucky as this whole scenario is, there was a moment where everything almost fell apart.
Well, there was a number of, I don't believe the movies are even done now and they're done. I mean, there's so many times where, things fall apart, and you could count, I don't know, any number of times. There's been...
Well, even on Last Only Place, we pushed for maybe a month or two before we started shooting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you either...
Kind of like, when is it going to happen now?
The cast doesn't line up, something doesn't line up, and put it this way, I have a bottle of champagne, of Dom Perignon, still in my refrigerator that I was going to crack and open when I was sure that we were going to start shooting, or that we were going to make this movie. And even though it's done and we're about to distribute it, but now that's the next thing, distribution. So yeah, things can just happen all the time. So you got to keep on your toes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Patrick, I don't mean to be ignoring you. How did you get involved in this shoot?
I guess it was, I had been working as a digital imaging technician for a number of years, working for Steve's first DP on Big Empty.
What is a digital imaging technician? What does that mean?
So a digital imaging technician is a member of the camera department that oversees kind of the media coming from set going to post. So depending on what the production requires, they're in charge of media management, time code, color management, and just an overall kind of communicating to post what's being shot.
Is there another name for that? I feel like I've heard a different name for that position.
Yeah, I guess the union position is digital imaging technician.
Okay.
There's media manager. There's
DIT.
data wrangler.
That's
DIT,
what I've heard.
Yeah, that's digital. That's the initials.
So I kind of fell into that out of school, and started working in that capacity, and met Chris Manley, who shot Steve's first movie, and I had done a couple TV pilots with him, and then when Chris had to step away from Last Lonely Place, he referred me. At that point, I had started shooting kind of low budget movies and doing my own work, and so we kind of met in the middle, and it worked out pretty well.
And you felt like you were ready for a feature at that point, or had you done a feature already?
Yeah, I had done 2 other movies that were a little bit smaller than Last Only Place.
That's saying something. It's a pretty small movie.
Yeah, Last Only Place was I had worked in kind of the bigger commercial TV world as a DIT, and had plenty of experience in that regard. And then my own shooting had been kind of in the lower budget space, and so Last Only Place was like a 5-person crew. So it kind of felt like a really nice fit. I felt very kind of prepared to to take on the project.
You had 5 crew members. Who were the crew members? What were the positions?
Well, that's kind of a simplification.
It was a
of
super
it.
small crew.
And it changed like every other day. It was like whoever wanted to come could come. And
Yeah, we
Are
would.
you
We didn't
free?
have a continuous crew really.
The thing was, in the cab, it could really, literally only fit Steve and me and the actors, and that was it. And so everyone else, we might have had more people there, but they were at the motorhome, and so I usually had an assistant every day that would help me rig the camera and the lights, and then we had Andre, who was our sound mixer, also a producer on the project, and then we had Jeff, who was a producer on the project, and Josh. And
So
then
producers were just sitting around eating donuts, and you guys
watching
were riding
movies.
around the
They would watch.
They were
movies.
working really hard. I
Yeah.
have to admit.
While you guys were working
It was
in the
an
cab.
interesting thing because, like Patrick said, about 75% of it takes place in the cab, and we're both relatively big guys. And then at some points we had, all 3 actors in the cab, so the 5 of us are in there, plus a camera. That
Two
was-
cameras
Two
sometimes.
cameras sometimes that were rigged in with big metal bars everywhere. Patrick was often sitting backwards in the front seat with his, back against the dashboard. Sometimes on the passenger side, sometimes in the middle. I'm crunched in the back with the 3 Zoom sound recorders. We didn't have like a sound recordist. They were all taped to this board, and we had rigged the cab with microphones so the actors didn't have to be mic'd up all the time. They would just get in, and we would just wherever the cab takes a very specific trek around Los Angeles, and we were very careful to, if the scene was shot on Sunset Boulevard on the Strip, we shot on the Strip. And so what would happen is we had one RV, and wherever we were shooting that day, we'd find a park nearby or a parking lot that would allow us to pull in the RV. Everyone would show up there, the actors would go in the RV, get dressed, a little bit of makeup, and then Patrick and I and the actors would jump in the cab and just go out and drive for 2 or 3 hours. And it was great. I mean, it was a lot of fun and super small, but I'm literally I'm like directing and hitting the record button, watching my little monitor.
You had a monitor?
It was
back
just like
there
a
too?
little,
5-inch,
Yeah.
in the back seat.
so it was great. I will say the actors loved it. They, Xander says that it's never, how does he put it, never made less, but enjoyed it more. Because when we were out in the cab, if we wanted to try something or they didn't feel they got it right.
And as far as our schedule was concerned, it wasn't, we had enough time to really shoot, and there wasn't really, it never felt like there was like this rush to shoot. It was always kind of,
We always went
would just
home
kind of like,
about-
if we didn't feel like doing, like, we get to 2 in the morning, we'd be like, do we do another scene or do we just go home and pick it up tomorrow, And
The actors were really good that way. We shot it in kind of this nice window, starting in November and ending around Christmas, when they aren't often working on something else and everyone lives here. So when we were shooting, like Patrick said, if we were just tired or didn't want to do another full setup, I'd just say, hey, can we do this on next Thursday? Are you guys good on Thursday? And they'd be like, great.
So how many days total did it take to shoot the film?
We shot principal 29 days.
Wow.
And the budget of the movie is $115,000.
Amazing.
So you hear of all these films that take $2 million and they shot in 22 days. Well, we shot 29 principal and then 29 of second unit, which were mostly sort of half days.
4-hour days. Yeah.
Where we, as I said, the cab takes a very specific ride. So if I would edit, and then if I needed a couple shots of the cab coming up Santa Monica Boulevard, I'd know exactly from the edit where we were, and I'd be like, oh, we need shakies outside the window. So we would just,
Get a
make
cutaway.
sure, pan from
Because
shakies
he also bought the cab, so we had.
I still own it. I still own the cab.
We had the cab,
If this filmmaking thing doesn't work out, I've been thinking
which
about
is a whole other story.
Yeah.
So why? I know why you bought the cab, but why did you write? I've never heard of anybody writing a film that took place mostly in a car. Why did you choose to do that?
That's a good story.
Well, it was, I was sort of convinced that I had to write a script that I knew I could do myself, like literally myself if I had to. Because I had just been really frustrated. It'd been 3 or 4 years since I'd made a previous film. you take a lot of meetings and, ups and downs, but I wanted to actually, I'm a filmmaker and I wanted to actually make a film. So I came up, with the basics of the idea, but the cab was great because a lot of these low budgets, super ultra low budgets, and there's a lot of them and a lot of good ones. But they take place in one location. They take place like on a farm or, in a hotel or something, and that everything centers around that one location because it makes financial sense to do it. And I just thought, well, what if that one location is the inside of a cab? And then that cab drives around the city, and hopefully if we do it right, the city itself will become a character in it. So, and that's what we tried to do. And that's why I was very careful to be specific about the route the cab takes, because I always hate in films where you're watching a film and there goes the car down Sunset, and the next thing you know, it's going down Sepulveda, and the people who live here are just like, what the fuck is going on?
LA people watching the movie are thrown off, but yeah, everyone
Can I
else
swear,
might not
by
be.
the way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We're on the internet, so you can
I
say
just
whatever
said
you
fuck
want.
underneath my breath. So,
You can
what
say
do you
fuck
mean?
out
I
loud.
kind of swallowed it quickly, but I wasn't sure.
If the audience doesn't like what you say, they can just fast forward.
I did a whole film about the word, so.
Yeah, that's right. So, Patrick, what were some of the benefits and setbacks of shooting almost an entire film in a car?
Well, there was a lot that we had to kind of figure out going into it. We kind of decided, from like a space standpoint, that the best camera to shoot on was a DSLR 5D, and so then we had to figure out what's the best way to keep it, stable inside the car. So that was a whole, 2 or 3 weeks of just going out every night and testing and trying out different rigs inside the car, and we eventually built we just screwed these little pins into the bottom of the floorboards of the car because we owned it, and then I would just build up these kind of 5/8 rods into like a cheese plate with a little kind of head, just securing the camera in such a way so that it doesn't, because that's the one thing about kind of the DSLRs is that they don't do very well with motion. They kind of, if you go over a bump, the whole camera jiggles, and that's going to be really distracting when it's really loud. So we just kind of tested. That was one of the things that we were super concerned about, and testing image stabilized lenses versus just primes. And
What kind of lenses did you end up using?
for this movie, we had a set of Zeiss EF lenses, just they're kind of cinema lenses, and then a set of Canon zooms, the L series zooms.
As I noticed that you never got any fisheye, you never felt like you were too close. A lot of times when you're filming that close
Yeah.
to someone, it feels like you're really in their face.
Yeah.
And you guys were able to, in a lot of shots, make it feel like you were almost outside of the car. So it's really hard for me to believe that you were both in the car with the actors, because there still felt like there was room in there.
Yeah, there's only a couple focal lengths on that with those lenses, and so it was either like 24, 35, or 50. So
Yeah.
50
was our zoom. It was
So I think most of the movie was probably shot on a 35. It just kind of felt like it was the best. We had these kind of hero positions in the car that we would put the camera in, and most of the time it was.
most of the time, I was trying to figure out how not to put it in that same position that we always have it in.
But
And we didn't. We did it 90% of the film we did without any permits or anything. So I was always kind of scared to put the camera.
Are you okay to say that on?
I'll own it. But we were certainly safe and everything. Although to this day, I'm not sure whether what we were doing is actually illegal or not, because we were inside the cab and someone was driving and we had our seatbelts on, and
Did you guys have your seatbelts on while you were operating the cameras?
I'd say most of the time. Most of the time.
But I didn't want to put the camera on the outside. A lot of times you'll see those mounts of the camera on the outside of the car, and because we were shooting on the Sunset Strip and right through Santa Monica and in downtown, I was always afraid that if we drove by a cop, they'd pull us over. Although there was a number of times during testing and shooting where we were fully rigged up inside, and there goes a cop by us, and they had to see what we were doing.
And
we were driving up and down Sunset Boulevard, that shot you saw where we're jamming a gun into the back of Reese's head over and over again. You know, and you could definitely see people driving by going, what the fuck is going on, you know? But no one said anything. We only got pulled over once, and that was after a shoot where
Tell me the story.
it was in Beverly Hills, and we actually did have permission to shoot at this self-storage place. It's just where they pull up to a self-storage. And everyone went back to the RV, and Reese and I, for some
With
reason...
fake plates on still.
Yeah, we had fake movie plates on. They were fake plates.
It has one extra letter or number.
Yeah, so when we pulled out, next thing we know, there's a Beverly Hills cop. And fortunately, I had the real plates under the seat. And so as he walked up, I said, I'm really sorry, but this is, it's a movie cab. We just finished shooting at Beverly Hills Self-Storage right there where we had permission. I'm just driving it back to the home base. Here it is. Here's everything. And he let us go. He was funny. He said that literally he thought that we were a gypsy cab, really. And I almost got arrested. It's a whole nother story. Maybe we'll do after like in Bill Maher with that kind of thing. But I almost got.
I'm not good enough. You got to wait for Bill.
Well,
Maher,
it's a long story. The short story is after the movie was over, I kept it parked at my place in Santa Monica on the street. And
this cop kept on.
Well, I was in San Francisco just visiting a friend, and I got a call from a neighbor, said the Department of Transportation and Santa Monica Police are here, and they're going to impound the car. So I got on the phone with them. I said, please don't impound the car. It's a movie cab, but it had real-looking, stickers and the medallion, which is the thing that's on the side of the cab.
They basically just our art department just copied.
Well, they copied it. Art departments, if you're in the art department, you should copy it, but make it different so it's not the same. But so they backed down. So when I got back from San Francisco, I put a big note in the window, said this is a movie cab, it's not a real cab, and I said something like, we have permission, which we did have permission from Yellow Cab, which is the cab you always see around here. They'd give, like, we had written permission that we could use their lettering and everything. And 2 weeks later, I'm editing in the morning and just standing there in my, basically in my underwear. And it's like early in the morning, and bang, bang, bang on the door. I mean, this really loud thing. And I go to the door, and it's the cop again. And he's like, starts literally right in my face. I told you do not have permission. We're coming right now, getting that car. And I'm like, oh, calm down. I said, I'm editing it right now. You can come see the movie. So he literally came into my apartment and watched some of the movie. Now I was very careful not to show him any scenes in Santa Monica because he would have known that we. And then the short little epilogue is there is some Sam, the lead character, plays he's a veteran with explosive background in the military, and so we had some bricks of C4 that was some props. And as he left, my eyes rolled focus from where he was to my shelf, and the 3 bricks of C4 were on the shelf. And without doubt, had he seen those, I would have been down on the ground. One of those bricks will blow up a city block.
They were real?
They weren't real.
Props.
They're props, but they looked real. And he would have called in the bomb squad, and I'm sure it would have been so, Officer Rosenfeld, if you're still out there, I still have those props.
And they are just props.
Yeah.
One of the other things I noticed and I loved about the movie was all of the external shots. And you guys were shooting in the cab and outside the cab. I think almost every scene was shot at night. So you were working with low light, and with the 5D, we're able to really make it look like film and capture a very cinematic quality of the mystery and romanticism of LA from just a lost time. How did you make a 5D look like film and really capture that much detail in low light?
Well, I mean, the value of shooting on a 5D is obviously the size of the sensor. So it's basically like because of the way it's a still camera, so it has the sensor size of almost a 60 millimeter sensor. So your anything that's behind the focal plane is really out of focus. You get really nice bokeh. All the lights in the background kind of are very large if you're stopped down. And so we were actually most of the film was actually shot at a pretty decent ISO, if that makes any sense to anyone. But one thing that we kind of were fighting was the storefronts were so bright, and so in order to maintain exposure outside and inside, because the camera is so sensitive, it was blowing out the storefronts. And so I was always having to fight the amount of light that was inside, because we wanted the street lights to have a lot of interplay with the actors' faces and stuff. And in order to get exposure on that, and then also maintain exposure on the storefronts, there was kind of like a balance of shooting the two. But yeah, we shot with a kind of flatter profile on the camera, and spent countless hours kind of color correcting and kind of working it in. And but we were all pretty happy with the level that it kind of gave us, and the texture. Yeah,
we didn't want to make it look like it was lit and inside the cab, because a lot of times you'll see films, and even from the outside, you just sort of, it's supposed to be lit by the dashboard, but the people just have this big light on them. It just looks ridiculous. And one thing I love to do is drive around Los Angeles at night, because it's a completely different city than it is during the day. When you drive out there during the day, it's hot and it's a little dirty and it's a little crazy, but at night it becomes a really sort of poetic swirl of stuff. I mean, it's nothing like driving around Los Angeles at night and putting some jazz on, and you can almost feel like you're back in the 40s and 50s. And that's one thing we wanted to convey in this film. So we did a lot of testing. We ended up with these very small LED lights. They're literally, a strip of them is about 8 inches long and 1 inch wide, and there's about maybe 10 little lights, and Patrick could stick that light up just using tape or Velcro to the top, and then a little mixer, and so you could have that little string of lights it was like a disco kind of, you could have it up and down. And we tried sometimes, I would sometimes be, not very often, but sometimes, I would ride the lights up a little bit, like we'd be going down a street where it'd be really bright outside, and he'd have his camera set for that, and then we'd go into a darker area, and then you could just boop, kick up the lights a little bit. But as a director, I just wanted to see those lights going all over the people's faces, because that's what it feels like when you drive around. You just sort of feel that. And Patrick did an amazing job doing that.
I remember there was one scene in particular where the lead character was driving the car and he was looking in the mirror, and the shot was of his face through the mirror, and you see the lights changing.
Behind him?
As if it was coming from the front, I think. But it was you were capturing the light.
That was the other thing, yeah. Every time the cab comes into a stoplight, Steve is really proud of this, is when the light changes from red to green, you feel that.
You can see it on the character's face.
Was that a lot of times just what was happening naturally?
That's totally natural, totally yeah.
And the LED?
Because we never stopped. We never when we were driving, we were always in the cab. There's only a few scenes in the movie that were in the cab that were actually lighting from, using Kinos or whatever from the street. Most, there's 2 scenes where they're just talking that were lit kind of in a parking lot, and they're just kind of sitting there, and we're lighting from outside the cab. The rest of the stuff in the cab is lit, off of the cab's battery.
I still crack up too, because that reminded me, it's like independent filmmaking at its finest is those scenes. There's a couple of scenes where they pull over and have discussions. So we wanted to make those look a little differently. So we thought, okay, let's find a parking lot where we can park the RV over there, the cab over here, run the generator from the RV, plug in the lights, and we'd be 100. But we just found this parking lot downtown. It was kind of on the back side of downtown.
Like little Tokyo.
And at 6 o'clock, the guy went home, and we'd go in at 6:15, and we'd shoot there all night long. It became like our little, you could go down there tonight and shoot. We never paid for anything. No one ever stopped.
And it was perfect because it just had a street that wrapped around. So we would just kind of rotate the cab and be like, okay, we want cars going. We want the bokeh to be going this way and that way in the shot. And
it's that shot that you like where you see Century City up behind you. Is we knew the cab. I knew exactly where the cab was supposed to be parked in reality. So wherever we shot the camera angle, we knew where the street lights should be in the back. So whatever, we would just turn the cab around if we needed something. So it's pull the cab around and pull it in. But it was so much fun. It was certainly a lot of fun shooting it because we had a great time, but trying to figure out these ways to shoot it for no money. And it was great. We basically owned that parking lot for 5 nights, I think.
That's great. That's the best thing that any independent filmmaker can really ask for, is those little hookups that you get from just accidentally finding out or through friends and introductions.
I don't even know how we found that parking lot. I mean,
it was just, I think Jeff, the producer, had called around trying to find a parking lot where we could just park one night. And the night we got down there, I think we were driving around the city we realized that, the owner of the lot said, yeah, get there at 6, it'll cost you $200 and pay the guy. And so we got down there and the guy wasn't there. So we never paid him. And we're like, well, let's come back here tomorrow. And the guy wasn't there. And so we just shot in this, and it was a huge parking lot. I mean, it was like 6 football fields, and we were the only people there, and it was a lot of fun.
That's great. That's great. That is one of my favorite shots, right in front of the Century City. The moon is shining in the background. We'll show a slide in the final. I'm sorry, we don't have
that
it,
is a
guys.
real one, right? That's the real moon in that shot.
It's the real moon, yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple comps, but that's
a number of times. It was one of those developing themes is that when we were shooting, and I think we tried to time it at one point, like there's some scenes that take place in the desert towards the end of the film. They end up driving out to the desert. We thought, we should shoot in the desert when there's a full moon because it's actually bright and it actually lights up the desert. I'm not sure we actually succeeded with that, but a number of times we shot during the film, the full moon was there and it became kind of a harbinger, along the way in the film. And but that shot you're talking about, we just went out. I think we did that on purpose a couple times. Like we knew it was going to be full moon. So we would try to take advantage of the moon being out there.
Yeah,
and then a few times I would just take that moon digitally. I sent Patrick out. The super moon was one.
Yeah.
He went out and shot just still images of the super moon, and it's super easy now just to sort of superimpose that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's actually a super moon in White Orchid too now.
Yes, there is. We've stolen shots from this movie and put in the second movie. That cab's in the White Orchid.
Well, now that you have it, it's going to be in every movie you make after this.
Exactly.
What was another question that I had? You wrote the film, and you talked about really capturing the city as another character and how you captured that magical essence of LA at night, having the same mood as it did in the 1940s and 30s. Mm-hmm. With writing a noir film today, especially filming in LA, when I first read the description, I was like, how are you going to pull that off? LA is so bleached and sunny and, commercialized, and there's just ads everywhere, and it's not the same city it was in the 30s and 40s. But you really did capture that. And part of it, too, was in your writing. As a writer, how difficult is it to kind of reinvent a genre and make it new, but really still capture that essence?
Well, I've always loved noir and film noir. It's been sort of my favorite ever since I was a kid. I was reading little pulp paperbacks, and my parents thought I was odd, but I always loved the sort of crime story. I always thought, and it's they provide great roles for actors. Really meaty roles people can really chew into, both men and women. Great roles for women, and I'd always sort of had this idea about a cab driver, and it kind of went back and forth from cab driver was an ex-boxer. I was just always thought a cab driver was a great character. But I just sort of relied on, I've been writing scripts now for a number of years, and I'll never say I'm good at it, but you get more and more comfortable at it. And when I came up with the basic idea of this cab driver that picks up a fare, as an investment banker, sort of like a Bernie Madoff type character, and you find out pretty early on that he's on the run, he's got to get out of the country before the shit hits the fan, basically. Mm-hmm. And I came up with a couple of the twists. I said, let's sit down and write this. And I really wanted to capture Los Angeles. Los Angeles is the home to many great film noirs. I mean, arguably the best film noirs are set here: Double Indemnity and Sunset Boulevard and the classics, and In a Lonely Place that Bogey made. And so as I was writing it, I just made sure to try to hit those touchstones. And one thing I'm really proud of the film is that if you sit back and list the LA landmarks, there's LAX, there's the Sunset Strip, you see Disney Hall, you see Santa Monica Pier, you see Sam's Hofbrauhaus, you see all these sort of classic LA landmarks. And what the cab ride was able to do is I literally plotted, I'd be like, oh, when the cab gets here, would it be better to go down Wilshire or take a right and go through Brentwood? Mm-hmm. And, so I could, as I was writing, envision some of the scenes and some of the landmarks that would make it into the film. And, first and foremost, of course, it's the characters, and this film does really well with that. It's a bit of a slow burn, and you get to know the cab driver and the banker very well. It's almost 30 minutes before Faye, played by Carly Pope, gets in the cab. Mm-hmm. So you're really invested in these characters once different kind of energy, enters that cab. But no, I love noir. The new film White Orchid is also noir, but it's much more of an elevated genre piece. It takes you a little while to figure out, like, wow, this is kind of film noir. I don't know how you reinvent it. I certainly didn't reinvent it, but you just try to write a good story and try to find a new little twist. And our little twist was an ultra low budget film. It's a film noir, a genre piece, and I hadn't seen too many of those that were sort of a pure noir.
Now, you made several nods to Humphrey Bogart in the film, some of them more subtle, some of them not so subtle. Like when you showed him watching the John Huston film, Beat the Devil. Did John Huston and Humphrey Bogart have any influence on you as a filmmaker when you were younger?
Well, I'd read all their books. I'd read John Huston's books. He's always been one of my favorite directors. He's a tough old crow, hard drinker. I mean, they always were sort of hard drinker, hard types back then. They made movies because they loved to make movies. And I wouldn't say they had a direct influence, but Bogart for sure. I mean, once the Bogart estate came on board and became, executive producers, there was a scene in the film where he's at this really seedy hotel where he lives downtown watching TV, and there's a great classic Bogart noir called Beat the Devil that's fallen into public domain. So we didn't have to ask anyone's permission again. We just put Beat the Devil on the TV, and it comes up, and of course our lead character, and if you watch closely as he's laying back in bed, he's drinking a whiskey, and he just gives a little nod, and it was us as a filmmaker's nod towards Bogey and to thank him for helping us out.
Yeah, absolutely. Patrick, when you were researching film noir, had you ever filmed a film noir film before?
I guess not as direct as these. I mean, I'd done a lot of shorts that were in a bunch of different genres, but nothing as obvious, I guess, or as trying to emulate more specifically.
When you were doing your research to get the look right for this film, what were some of your favorite films that you watched?
I gave him a whole pile of them.
Yeah.
I made him watch a whole slew of them that he hadn't seen.
Taxi Driver.
Taxi Driver was an obvious one. Double Indemnity, I think. In a Lonely Place, which...
He made me watch a bunch of Humphrey Bogart movies that I probably all forgot.
Yeah.
But
noir has its own language.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of just study that, and then... It's like everything else. If you want to be good at something, you study the rules, and then
you break them.
You break them, throw them away. All things being equal, as long as you know the rules, I prefer to break them if possible. Don't break them just because you can. Break them for a specific reason. But this film, we knew it was going to be super tough to shoot in a cab. That's why, Patrick came on literally 3 weeks before, and we spent those weeks just testing to make sure it was going to look good. And like Patrick said, there's a difference. Like if you have the camera mounted in the car and it's shaking, it literally jitters, and we didn't know whether we were going to make the film really until we figured out the third bar. Like you put the third bar.
3 bars down, and a bar on top, a bar on the lens.
And they're stuck with suction cuffs to the window.
I have some crazy pictures where it's just like.
But the key was if the camera bounces with the car, like if the car's bouncing and your camera's, but as long as you're bouncing with the car, then it stays. Then when you get the film back, it looks like it's steady.
It's also the Crown Vic that we shot in. The suspension in those old cars is like, it's just it's like a boat almost. Like if you hit one bump, the whole car just kind of goes up and down. And so, because I've done similar rigs in other cars, more contemporary cars that, we weren't nearly as successful.
We tried it on White Orchid and it wasn't nearly as good.
So it's definitely, that was an element of it. But and just watching other movies that were shot in cars, like whether Drive or the Michael Mann movie.
I always forget the name of it. Collateral.
Collateral. Just to, whether it's to emulate or to not emulate, just to see what worked for them or what not.
And there's only, honestly, so many places you can put the camera in a car. It's either pointed this way or that way.
Yeah.
And we had a little bit of what I always call a camera plot before you begin the movie. Like it's like, all right, for the first part, It's going to be in wider lenses, and then as we get in the middle, it'll be a little bit tighter. But a lot of times, just the shot would dictate. Literally, we spent I would say there was at least 6 or 7 nights where I didn't know where we were going to shoot after lunch. So I'd leave the cabin and drive up and down Santa Monica Boulevard, being like, okay, let's shoot there. And then I'd call the people and say, meet me here at the corner of Santa Monica and Bucknell. They would show up.
And which scene are we doing?
Yeah, which scene? And then so
They had to have a lot of faith in you then.
I just faked it.
Isn't that half of what, being any kind of professional anything? I mean, but a filmmaker especially is just like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. Just show up at this day and time and we'll figure it out.
It's not just that. You have to always, at least from a director's point of view, you always have to have an answer.
Yeah.
So people just want answers because they're doing their job and they need your answer to do a job. So I've just always learned, you do all your homework and you kind of have in your head, there's a couple kind of directors, one that are more meticulous planners, and then those are the kind of, symphonic conductor types, and then there's the more jazz types that kind of study and figure it out as you go along. You kind of improvise. And I'm much more of that take. It makes it more fun for me because I learn things and we try new things on the day. But as long as you give an answer, people will come up and they'll be, do you want the red one or the blue one? And I go, the red one. And they go away. And then later on, 15 minutes, you'd be like, they really want the blue one. And then you go back and they're like, can we have the blue one? They're like, sure, we can have the blue one. So, but if you're like, I don't know, the red or the blue, then they walk away. Steve doesn't know. He doesn't know whether he wants the red or the blue. And it
10 emails later.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, should we have do you want it to be yellow?
Maybe purple.
But as long as you answer and, you don't fuck with them really, but you answer and then let them do their job. And then if you want to adjust it later on, they're happy to oblige you. But you have to be confident, but be confident that you're making the best possible choice at that moment.
Yeah. Well, we've got some audience questions. We're used to using Twitter for our audience questions, so I don't have everybody's names today. We're using a new program on meet.ps. If you guys at home want to check it out, it's a really cool way to just moderate events like this. And our first one comes from the audience, and it was voted on. So 4 people voted on this. They want to know, how did you find your actors?
That's a good question. Well, I've always kept a long list of actors that I'd like to work with. I still maintain that list, and it's everyone from the some of the most famous actors you've heard of to actors that I don't think get enough time on screen, and then friends who are actors. We had a lot of friends that were in this film as well, and I made sure. Now a lot of friends got cut out too, which is always tough. But I make sure when I'm writing these small scripts that I'll have a number of supporting roles that have good lines and good moments in it, because I'm going to need my friends to help out. And if an actor can come and work for a couple of days and be able to help out for a couple of days, I'm happy to sort of provide that. But the answer to the question is it's super important if you can, and I know it's one of those bits of advice that jumps the obvious question, but find a great casting director. Because even though I've made a number of films, I'm still essentially a nobody when it comes to agencies or management companies in town. I can't get anyone on the phone. No one takes my phone number.
And how long have you been making films now?
I made the first film in 2000. We shot it in 2003.
Okay, so this is like a while.
Yeah, and you develop a lot of relationships, but we had Wendy Weidman and Rebecca Mangieri, who are great casting people. They had come on board the film before, which was The White Orchid, which I'd written even before I'd written Last Lonely Place, and they had come on the script level because they loved the script. So when it came time to make Last Lonely Place, I asked them whether they would come on, and you can imagine it was SAG, ultra low budget. I don't think the actors will mind, but they made $100 a day. I mean, those the bare minimum actors can make.
And those are phenomenal actors.
Yeah, fantastic actors. They really love the script. Reese came on first. Reese Coiro plays the lead actor, and he's was on Entourage, he was such a great actor that the other 2 actors knew of him and knew his work. And Carly came on soon after, and then Xander Berkeley only came on. We had started shooting 4 or 5 days, and we weren't really sure who was going to play Frank, the third.
And he was supposed to shoot like kind of first.
Yeah, he was. We had to completely upside down the schedule because Carly came on, but Carly had to leave by a certain day, but Xander could come on and go on. But the back to the answer, if you get a great casting director, they will have so many connections in the agency, and they become your foot in the door, because the agents and the managers will say, hey, if Wendy and Rebecca are working on it, it must be a quality project. Just like film festivals are sort of funnels through which films are chosen because they're maybe better. There's 4,000 films, but only 200 get shown. If Wendy and Rebecca call CAA or UTA and say, hey, we have this little independent film, there's not a lot of questions. They just say, okay, what's the budget? And you don't have to convince agents or actors to take your call.
Which probably saves a lot of time too.
It does.
The next question has 5 voters. Wow, you guys are really active on this. I love it. This person asked, you used a 5D to shoot to great effect and smart choices. Would shooting on a red have been more problematic?
I guess the only difference with the red would have been the amount of media that we shot. I mean, there would be a lot of differences, but yeah, I mean, we probably ended up shooting like 60 gigs a day, whereas if we had shot on a red, it would have been a couple hundred gigs. We didn't really have anyone to download. I mean, well, I guess we had Jason.
Jason was there playing DAT. I would just say, I mean, I fought for the 5D just because of the form factor. It was small. It's like the camera, you guys have Blackmagics here, but they're small, and it just felt small. One of the big things in the film when we made it is we never wanted to look like a film crew because we were doing everything essentially without permits, driving around, parking here, parking there. So I was always, even though I'm the director, I would make people park up the street. We didn't want to, a film crew is a very specific looking thing. You see them all around Los Angeles. So, a red.
And it also came down to budget too, because Steve knew he didn't want to just rent something and shoot in order to be able to shoot. We ended up shooting 60 days on this. We would have never been able to afford to rent a red for 60 days. We ended up just buying a camera, and so our whole camera budget was like
$3,500 or whatever to buy that camera.
To buy the camera,
and then I owned it.
So it was a smart decision on that front. Whereas if we had rented, we would have had to shot the movie completely differently, because we would have been more on a 20-day schedule and very little second unit.
There's a lot of, the second answer is we shot the second movie, The White Orchid, on a red, and there's not that much difference when it comes to the production aspect of it, but I've found through the editing process and everything else that there's now a lot of things that you don't think about, that you have more media because the files are larger.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to count this last night, but I have two promise
two
Pegasus.
raids. You have two raids.
Two raids. Each of them have 4 terabyte things. So I have 48 terabytes, this stack of 48 terabytes, and that's all the media. And with all that media comes, more costs and all sorts of things. So the 5D was the very smart choice because it was small camera, the media on the cars was very easy to wrangle, and it was something, a lot of it, I had a co-editor, Jason, on it, but a lot of this stuff I edited the film as well, so I could figure it all out without a lot of.
And then and a good portion of the film, the second half of the film, when Reese and Xander are in the cab together, and when Carly's in the cab, we shot 2 cameras too. So then we're mounting, so if we had something that was, the simplicity of the 5D made it really convenient for me to be able to rig 2 cameras in a fairly small space and not have to, be dealing with larger cameras and larger more, power-hungry cameras. Or
the audio was probably the biggest challenge, is that because we couldn't really record directly to the camera, they were recording to these small little recorders. So Jason Payne, who was sort of the DIT and the second editor, would have to take the cards from the recorders and the camera, run it through this whole second program to sync everything before we could do anything. So there was this whole extra step.
How did you like working with the Zoom? I just learned about the Zoom recently. I was working on a little short film that was very guerrilla style, and it was recommended to me by the director of my last film. He's like, it's like $150 it does the job. You can hook up lavs to it. You can do what you want with it. And as far as like guerrilla style filmmaking, he highly recommended it. And a lot of people hadn't heard of it before. Would you recommend it for like this type of shoot?
You know, definitely for this type of shoot. I mean, it's essentially a professional, you know, recorder, a small little zoom recorder, and it has built-in mics that you can use for second unit shot, but it also has XLR inputs that make it very easy to plug microphones into. You don't have to have a lot of adapters. So for small guerrilla style productions, it's invaluable. Now, as I said, your audio and your media, visual media, is going to be on two different things, and you have to take a second step to marriage that. But there's what's the name of that software? Pluralize, that you kind of plug it in and it does it. But it's a whole step that.
Yeah, I guess if you'd had a red, you could do timecode sync, and it's a little bit quicker, but you know, it wasn't the end of the world.
No, it just made I'm getting over technical, but it gave the Premiere, I cut in Premiere, and when we had all those extra files in the project, because that's where he did the syncing as well, it bloated the project up a little bit, and it just made everything that much slower and bigger. I learned a lot on that project, how to manage the media on the new film, and the new film's gone without a flaw, really.
Awesome. The next audience question is, social media played a huge part in your fundraising. Will you continue to use it in the future?
Definitely we will. I mean, you know, Kickstarter really kind of kicked off this chapter of, I'm now running Santana Films, which is a company that Humphrey Bogart started in 1948, and he shuttered around 55 or so. But after we had such a great experience on This Last Lonely Place, I went back to the estate and said, why don't we start Bogart's company back up? And you know, we've talked about we've shot The White Orchid, but we've talked about possibly doing a social media campaign for it. One of the things that I find to be absolutely true, and it's not to be diminished, is of course you run these campaigns because you need money. I mean, that's without saying. But that money you can only spend once. But the crowd, they become your fans, they become people that become really invested in the film, they want to know about it, they become your pilgrims out in the field that start spreading the word, they tell their friends about it. So crowdfunding is really not about the funding, it's really about the crowd. And you know, because now we have 500 people that kind of eat up our every word. They want to see the new poster, they want to see the new trailer, they want to know when it's going to be distributed. We've talked about possibly doing some sort of distribution plan. It's a combination of self-distribution with a distributor, but actually using something like Indiegogo or Kickstarter for that.
For distribution?
So we'd run a campaign, I'm making this up as I go, so don't hold me all to it, but we've been talking about it, is use the power of something like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, to sell the film. So you could have a film on VHX or Vimeo or one of the places where you can get $5 for a download. And use Indiegogo to do that for 30 days and say, hey, contribute $5 and you can get the code to stream it. And so and Indiegogo and a number of companies have wanted to work with us again because they like the idea of working with Bogart. We really like this combination of old school Bogart and then the new technology, and we really think it's a great mix. And so it's a great way to kind of use both platforms, and we'll have a few extra added bonuses. $5 you get a stream, $15 you get the commentary tracks, and we have a number of props and things from the film. If people really like it, they can bid a little bit more. And then after 30 days, and also what's great about it is the people that already have contributed, of course they're going to get the stream because they've already contributed. But they're always asking, when can our friends see this? And so we'll be able to reach out and say, all your friends who are asking to see it, well, they can now contribute to Indiegogo, pay $5, and they can see it right away. Yeah. Same time you guys can.
And for $5, would they own it on their computer and be able to watch it whenever they want, or would it just be a one-time stream?
No, we're likely to use this portal called VHX, which is a new, really up-and-coming portal that allows you to upload the film, create your own website. And it's primarily, from our point of view, at least in this specific case, filmmakers use it for a lot of different areas, but it's available worldwide, DRM free. They buy it, they download it, they own it. You sort of beg their their goodwill that they're not going to stream it. You're going to say, look, we're giving this to you guys for $5. You can watch it on your phone, on your TV, on your iPad, whatever you want. But go tell people about it.
Yeah.
So no, it would be available. You would essentially own it.
And that's a great price too, because if you think about iTunes, you spend $3 to $5 to rent a movie anyway. The next question from our audience is, how important do you feel it was to shoot in LA? It seems like it was advantageous.
I mean, yeah. Although
Kind of talked about this,
Steve has mentioned at some point he wants to give the script out and see if other cities will make the movie and see how different.
I'd still do that to this day. I mean, the cool part about the film is, for the most part, I own it. I mean, we didn't have investors, and so a number of the people that worked on the film, like Patrick, I mean, I probably don't mind me saying you do, but none of the main people got paid anything. Not a dime to work on the film. But what I was able to do is, because we didn't have investors to pay back, I was able to give Patrick and some of the other key crew, points in the film. Now, points are usually meaningless. Never always try to get them, but I've never gotten them on any movie. But this movie, the first dollar we make, literally the first dollar I make will be profit. So, if we make $100,000 and Patrick has, a number of points, he'll do pretty well. We'll all do pretty well. So that was sort of the pitch. But the question, though, shooting in LA, I wanted to shoot here. There was no question whether to shoot here. We shot all of the White Orchid, the next film, 100% in California. And we shot, how many days on that? 35, 36 days?
Yeah.
Something like that, all in California. I don't want anyone to tell me I can't shoot in California. Now, most of it's non-union. White Orchid was much more standard, although it was still a super small crew. It was probably 20 people as opposed to 5. But it can be done. This film the script was set here, and that was part of the fabric of the film, was to kind of incorporate the city into the film. So,
but I guess you could see the movie being a Chicago movie, or being a New York movie, being a Paris,
Yeah, well, I'm sorry I jumped on Patrick's thing, but I wanted to at the beginning, and I still might do it, is I have the scripts, and I would, if there was filmmakers that I believed in and wanted to, I'd send the script to Paris and to New York and let them make their own version of it. Just the same movie with different actors and a different director, and just, I thought that, I talked about that at the beginning and never quite got up to it, but I just thought it was neat. Like, one time 3 movies will come out. It's all the same movie, but with 3 different actors. We have more actors, 3 different leads, 3 different directors, 3 different cities. They'd be fun to watch. You watch one, compare it, which one you like, which one.
I think it'd be really cool to do that with a series of shorts and then put them all together in a package. Like, do 5-7 minute shorts and put them together so you could watch them back to back and really get the sense of each city and the personalities of the people from that city and how that changes the story. We have a couple more questions here. Will you or have you submitted to TIFF or any other international film festivals?
This film, Last Lonely Place, we submitted to Toronto, but it was much too early. It was one of the film just wasn't anywhere near done. It didn't have any sound. It didn't have any score. So we basically skipped that. Now, it's been challenging because we shot Last Lonely Place in November. We formed Santana Films somewhere, maybe in April and May, and decided to make another film, and we got the money, and we had the script ready to go, so we shot it in the following November. And that was the months when you would be spending a lot of time marketing, figuring out what festivals you're going to go. So we kind of, to a certain degree, put Last Lonely Place on the shelf a little bit. There wasn't anything we could do for the few weeks of pre-production, the shoot, and then post-production. So only really now are we kind of figuring out a festival plan. It's a little late in its standard life, but it's because we had the ability to shoot another film, and if you have the ability to go shoot another film, go shoot one.
Especially when you've been sitting around for a few years waiting to shoot a film.
Yeah, and that one we got a great cast with Olivia Thirlby in the lead, and we shot all in California, and Morro Bay, Big Sur, San Francisco, beautiful locations. Patrick shot that as well, and so it's a bit of embarrassment of riches, but the quick answer is yes. Well, it's changing a little bit. I don't think the festivals, in one way, they're as important, but they're not the be-all, end-all anymore, because especially with the Bogart following behind us. They have a huge social media campaign that if we can target a few good festivals and then decide to release it in some fashion, we're hopeful that the audience that really wants to see it anyways will come out and see it, either if we have a screening or if we self-release it. You know, a lot of the people that will pay, you know, $5 or whatever to see it. So that, you know, we're hopefully not as reliant on the festival. Like, we don't want to go to a festival and just get picked up. We would, but we don't need to.
Right.
Yeah.
I have 2 more questions that I want to use
I
before.
have a couple as well, but you do yours and then I'll go.
Okay, because
You're at 0. It's blinking red.
We had so much.
You're supposed to wrap it up.
I know, we're at 0.
You'll
It's
start
like-
humming like the music at the opera.
we have quite a few more questions from the audience as well. I just wanted to see how much, like,
How are you guys?
We're fine. I'm happy to go however
You
long.
wanna
I know
come
you guys
more?
have another one, but
You
I
guys in
don't.
the audience are cool to shorten our break between guests a little bit?
you want to hear your questions answered? Okay. I'm going to do, how about I do 2 more of these questions and then mine and
And
then,
then I got a couple.
And
Okay,
we'll,
all right.
we'll kind of shorten her.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the point.
All right,
Yes.
so we're going to try to like fit 6 questions
3.
into maybe like 3 minutes. No. So, all right, another
Yellow,
audience-
red, and orange.
We're, yeah. All right.
Okay.
So another question is, was there any scene or shot that ended up, oop, it moved on me. I'm going to start that again.
Okay.
Another question from the audience is, was there any scene or shot that ended up looking or being very different than you imagined it on the page?
Is there anything that you can think of? I mean, I'll answer quickly if you can think of one. I mean, in the script, I had written in that Faye, who plays Frank's mistress, stayed at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Now, I had no idea how exactly we were going to get the Beverly Hills Hotel, but because of her character needing to stay at a relatively upscale hotel, that's what I had written in. While we were prepping, I came to find out that the Bogart estate had some connections to the Chateau Marmont. And through some discussions with them, we were allowed to shoot there, and which was awesome. I mean, we were in in this little movie, and we shot, I think, 3 or 4 days there in the penthouse. It was great. But as a director, I had to shift a number of, literally
Logistics,
we
yeah.
got, logistics about how we shoot it, what it looks like. It felt different when we got there than the Beverly Hills Hotel. Like, I'd sort of scouted the different locations of Beverly Hills Hotel. So that was, in any film, you may not get the locations until a few days, before, and there's a big difference a lot of times from what's on the page to what you can actually shoot. We'll walk in sometimes the day of the shoot and go, okay, we're in this room, 2 doors there, and you work with the actors and the staging. So I guess that's the quick answer. Is there anything that you can think of?
I mean, other than like the blocking inside the cab, and we knew Reese was going to be in one position the whole time. There wasn't a lot of mystery there, but then in the back seat there was a lot of kind of. I know there was some discussion when we're shooting. I would be like, Steve, like, where are they actually going to be in the back? And Steve's like, well, I just kind of want them to feel it out. I want them to, and so trying to figure out where the cameras were going to go and how the lights were going to play with them, and the best places for them to be in the cab so they catch light. But for the most part, I mean, the movie kind of ended up being relatively similar to the script. I know you changed the structure around a little bit in the edit, when you developed things and when you showed all the scenes that cut out of the cab, those kind of moved around a little bit.
Yeah, that would be the only thing. I mean, I think when you guys see it, it's a film that's told largely. There's a distinction I make that most people don't, but there's 2 or 3 true flashbacks in the movie, but the rest of it's told out of order. So a lot of people see like it's a flashback because I'll play things that happened yesterday and play today. And that changed a little bit in the edit as opposed to what the script was. But you really, as I'm finding out now with White Orchid, the edit becomes the final rewrite of the film. So you write the script and it's a good solid chunk of 100 pages and makes sense, people like it.
And there's bits in there for the technical people on set, there's bits in there for the actors, and then
you shoot it, and we shoot the script, although the script is dictated by locations that are different. So you have to make a lot of
And then there's a
little
lot
changes.
of, and the actors bring their own kind of flavor to things and
Of course,
kind of come
yeah.
on set and kind of, and then you have to make last minute kind of game day decisions if something's not working or if, you know.
And I love working with actors. That's the most, by far, I had on this movie two of my very favorite creative spaces where unfortunately it's a scene I can't talk too much about because it's one of the twists, but we, at some point, once the movie gets older where a number of people have seen it or don't care, I'll put like the 8 takes up online and you can see the first take is almost exactly like the script. Mm-hmm. We did that a couple of times and then I saw Reese, he kind of looked like he kind of touched the other actor, like I couldn't tell because it was below frame and that kind of, I was like, oh, that kind of gave me like did that happen? Like I asked him, did you? And he's like, and that led to something else, that led to something else, and the final scene is just mind-blowingly great from an acting standpoint. But it just happened in the alleyway behind my apartment building is where we shot it. We pulled the cab up in the alleyway. That's where the scene actually takes place. It's supposed to be an apartment building in Malibu, but it's actually my. But you know, being able on films like this to we just sat in the cab the whole time. You know, it was just us in the cab. Try this, try that. And if the actors, you know, will trust the process, trust the director, and the director will trust the choices the actors make, then it's what we do this for. You know, it's so much fun.
Awesome. I'm gonna go ahead and end it with the audience questions. I'm sorry, guys, because we're running out of time. But I'm gonna ask my final 2 questions, and one is one that I asked everybody that comes onto the show, so I'll say that for a second. But this other one I think would be kind of inspirational. As people who've been in this industry for a really long time, and I'm sure you've had a vast resume of projects that you've worked on. What was your
3.
what was the lowest point in your career? What was that like moment that was like, I don't know why I'm doing this? And then also, what was your highest point?
Last Tuesday and last Wednesday. No, no, the business doesn't. I love doing it. I get to get up every morning and do exactly what I love to do. In some fashion, I cater more towards the creative parts, the editing or the shooting or the writing. But there's also a lot of business that has to happen. But it's business about a project that you love and you've put your heart and your soul into. But it doesn't get any easier. At least it hasn't for me. There's ups and downs where you start to get a few phone calls or you start to get a few more opportunities or you get a couple of script writing jobs and cash flows a little better. And then there's months at a time where you can't get the project going and no one's returning your call and you're starting to think of options or what you should do. But I've just never, at this point, I don't know what else I would do. And I've had some amazing experiences. My resume aside, some of my really great experiences have been working on these films and starting from the first one, The Big Empty, of Jon Favreau and Daryl Hannah and Sean Bean, and that was my first film, and it was like, holy crap, you got to make sure you're pretty good at it. And then it did a great documentary called Fuck, about the word fuck, which was awesome. Festivals love that film because it said fuck right on the ticket. You had to buy 2 tickets to Fuck, which was awesome. So but the highs and you have to get really used to the highs and lows because you have to operate almost always in the middle, because if you start to believe the highs, then no one's going to like you anymore. And if you get too low, then you'll never be able to work again, really. So, I just endeavor to kind of get up and keep doing it and try to do my best. One of my things is I've never been stressed a day in my life. I just don't get stressed. It's not in my personality. Sometimes I wish I did get stressed because I feel like it would get things done a little bit more. But I always just figure if I'm doing the best I can, then screw them if they have a problem with it. I'll do something else. But I'm doing the best I can, and I know that's not a specific answer, but I mean, inspirational. Find that middle, and let yourself rise up when you need to. But keep a cap on it a little bit, and remember that there's low points. It's like reviews.
Yeah.
You get great reviews, and you're like, oh my God, I'm the greatest filmmaker.
I'm the best thing
And then
ever.
you read some of these reviews, and you're like, holy crap, you just want to crawl under a rock and die. So you need a bit of a tough skin, but keep at it. I've always said that if I can do it, I'm, basically an English major from upstate New York, and came out here, 20 some years ago with a dream, and if I'm able to do it, everyone can do it.
And what about you, Patrick? Have you had any bad days in the last 10 years?
Yeah, I guess I would summarize it in like, I didn't get into the industry to make a ton of money, and I think there's definitely the opportunity to make money, and you get on projects where you're making a lot of money, and then you get on projects that you don't make a lot of money, but it's never like an issue. Like, what I'm mostly motivated by is maintaining my creativity and being able to execute on that, and I've always kind of just never. Maybe I should have more fear about, will I get another call for a job? But you just kind of ride through it and hope that you get good jobs. And I think there's a little bit of psychological. You have to like just fight through that that part of your brain that says that you're not gonna get called again, or and you just keep on going. I mean. I would say most of the stuff that I really like that I've shot, I probably didn't make a ton of money on, and then there's stuff that you take jobs that you make a bunch of money, and so you just kind of have to balance the two, and keep whenever you do have free time, keep yourself creative, maintaining, watching movies, and instead of getting into the, I guess, psychological, like doubting yourself and whatnot. So.
Yeah, and my final question then is the same thing I ask everybody that comes on the show, and it's for
Favorite swear
our
word?
audience. It was your homework. Okay. What is the one lesson that, if you could choose anything that you've learned in your career, and you could go back and talk to your younger self, or talk to someone who's just starting out and wants to get to where you are, what's that one thing that you would instill and impart on them?
I would overemphasize like. Relationships, like every person you meet, you want to engage with them. You want to present who you are to them, and you want to understand who they are. And so even when you're, I felt like in my career I've had a fairly quick amount of success. I've gone from being an assistant to a DP in a relatively short amount of time, and I can only say it's because you just have to present yourself to people in a way that is professional and understanding, and listening to people, and trying to. You never know who's going to be your boss the next day, and so you just have to. I think there was a portion of my time where I probably didn't do this. And I kind of regret that, and so just being presentable, and there's there's the potential to have a lot of stress on set, and so you can react in a lot of different ways. And I think if you just realize that, like this one AD told me once, like we were on a set, and he was like, it was a Dunkin' Donuts commercial. He's like, everyone, just calm down. We're just making a donut. We're just selling donuts. It's So if you take away the pressure and you just kind of say, okay, these are all people. They have lives. They have their past. They're coming from a lot of different areas, and understand the humanity in everyone that's on set, and building relationships and building friends. And everyone wants to make movies with people that you enjoy and are friends with, and so. Trying to develop those relationships instead of having it be about the business.
Yeah, that's good advice. Steve, what about you?
Yeah, I always say the famous saying is like it's show business. Like people always want to point that out to you, but I always point them at it's shows first. The creative part's actually before the business part. It's just a really good question. I mean, I'll answer it in just quickly in two ways. One, people always ask really about the writing, and I always have to keep myself writing. And then the other part's about the filmmaking and how you get stuff done. But with writing, there's no trick to it other than what I say, just keep your ass in the chair. You got to get up every morning and put your ass in that chair, whether it's at your house, your apartment, you go to Starbucks, you have to consistently do it. I had met an old friend who I hadn't seen last night who was a yoga teacher, and I said, I don't do yoga anymore, obviously, but I said what I took away from that was the word practice, like they have yoga practice, and I always love that verb, and with writing it's the same way. You practice writing every day, so you got to get up, and there's literally no excuses. It's like going to the gym. If you want to lose weight, you go to the gym or you work out. So it's keep your ass in that chair, and there's no getting around that. The filmmaking part of it, to kind of sum that up, and it's something I have to sum up, have to continually remind myself, is that when you want to make a film, you want to go out and produce a film, you want to act in it, you want to direct it, just make a movie, you're going to have to meet with so many people. You're going to meet with financiers, you're going to meet with production people, or you're going to meet with department heads, you're going to meet with actors, and you just have to do your homework. And when people ask me for advice, I just say you have to have your shit together. And it sounds like a minor thing, but if anyone comes up and asks me a question, I want to make sure that I have my shit together, that I've thought about that before, and that I will have an answer. It's a bit of an echo of what I was saying before. And I think what I've found a lot of people in the past couple of years is they step out kind of before they have their shit together. They want to raise the Kickstarter, but we're just going to kind of do it like this and that. And people won't respond to that. They won't. They'll sense that you don't have your shit together. So you have to kind of make sure you do. You have a battle plan of here's how you're going to do it, here's how you're going to shoot it, here's what the actors want to know. And once you have all that and practice it, I used to, when I first came to town, it was kind of before the internet, I had to make calls to try to get my script into different production companies. So I gave myself a different name. The scripts were written by Anders Hart. I was Steve Anderson. So I would call up, like writers, they wouldn't take calls from writers, but they would take calls from other producers. So I'd say, hey, this is Steve Anderson. I own American Beauty Entertainment. We're over here on the Raleigh lot. I have this new writer, Anders Hart, got a new script from him. And I really think you guys should see it. And they would always take the script. Like if I called up and I was just the writer, they wouldn't take it. They're like, we don't accept submissions from writers. But what I did is I thought of everything they might ask me, and I put it like on a little 3x5 card right in front of me. So they'd be like, well, what have you done before? I'd be like, well, I've done, and I would just sort of, use the card as like a bit of a.
Whenever I do cold calling too, I always like feel my heart beating out of my chest. Like you get nervous and forget everything. That's a really good idea to have a card.
Yeah, it was just, if they saw me, they would have looked ridiculous. But I was able to get, I'd never actually made the movies, but I got scripts into the CAA and ICM, and it was very odd. I'll finish it up by saying that at one point I thought I was going to change my name because Steve Anderson is like the world's most boring name. So I went with Anders Hart for about a month, and I went to like this workshop at AFI, and they gave me the name card that said Anders Hart on it, and I walked up to, there's like 3 people there I didn't know that I knew that were going to be there, and they're like, Steve, how's it going? I'm like, great, good to see you guys, and I was like, whoosh, I ripped that thing off, and I realized I couldn't do that, but you just, clearly I didn't have my shit together. So anyways, it's a long answer to
so
a
relationships
good question.
and keep your shit together.
Exactly.
To sum it up, thank you so much for joining us, guys. How can people find out more about your film and when it's going to release and follow it?
The best way is to go to our Facebook page. Everyone has, most of us has a Facebook page. So if you look for This Last Lonely Place on Facebook or The White Orchid on Facebook, that's where we do most of our social media out of there. And you can find us there. And stay tuned. We'll make sure We Make Movies has all the info as we go forward.
Awesome. And as you guys feed us the info, we'll put it on our Facebook as well as our Twitter. You can follow us at We Make Movies with a Z. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to our audience for joining us live. Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. That was really fantastic.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. I wish that we had time for all the questions. You guys were fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
The number of questions.
As well. We've got 15 minutes.
Yeah, so we're going to take a break. Do you guys want to watch the game for the next 15 minutes, see who won?
It's over.
Is it over?
It's over.
Over about an
Sorry.
hour.
Let me just we got a quick 15-minute break here. Our next guests are just as awesome, so please stick around and watch the next show.
Thank you guys so much. I have a little gift for you as well. See, I'm gonna change my shirt.
Oh, sure. Hey, man. Good to see you. You're good. Yeah, I saw your name with well. I didn't recognize you back there. I saw it kind of, I saw like a little kind of familiar. Yeah. But yeah, so it's been quite a couple of years. Yeah. Oh, I think he's done it. You still in the neighborhood? Yeah. Yeah. Riding. Yeah. How's doing as much riding? Thanks very much. But yeah, I mean, it's still good. It's big. It's amazing.
Yeah, she was doing a lot of she was like assistant for a while. What are you? Yeah, she was there.